I never imagined the defining moment of my life would be a resounding slap, echoing through a crowded terminal at Chicago O'Hare. 1 second, I was double-checking our departure time on the monitors, and the next, a stinging crack snapped my head to the side, loud enough to bring the entire concourse to a dead halt. Hundreds of strangers froze. Cell phones instinctively came up, and before I could even process the burning sensation spreading across my cheek, my parents were already sprinting toward us. They didn't come to check if I was okay. They came to discipline me. They had absolutely no idea that I was the one bankrolling this entire luxury getaway to the Bahamas, or that in less than 10 minutes, I would make a silent choice that would leave them entirely stranded while I boarded the flight alone. My name is Clara Vance, and for 29 years, I have been trapped in the suffocating role of the dependable one. I was the anchor, the mature older sister, the woman who never pushed back, never complained, and never let anyone down. It is terrifying how easily a reputation can become a prison, morphing into a lifelong sentence you never signed up for, yet everyone expects you to serve. In our household, my younger sister Maya was the fireworks display. Erratic, loud, deeply emotional, and fiercely dramatic in a way my parents somehow found endearing. I, on the other hand, was the mop and bucket. When Maya threw a tantrum, I soothed her. When she made a colossal mistake, I did the damage control. When my parents needed a crisis averted, they bypassed her entirely and dropped the weight square on my shoulders. I spent my whole life convincing myself that carrying their burdens was just what love looked like. But somewhere along the line, the sheer exhaustion of being the only adult in the room started hollowing me out. I work as a financial risk analyst for a major corporate firm, a career built on logic, spreadsheets, and predictable outcomes completely devoid of the chaotic emotional swings of my family. It pays exceptionally well, so when the idea of a tropical family vacation was floated, covering the immense costs didn't seem like a sacrifice. It just felt like my standard duty. I rationalized it as a beautiful gesture. A rare treat for my parents who hadn't taken a real vacation in over a decade, and a generous escape for Maya, who constantly complained about the toxic stress of quitting a new job every 4 months to focus on her aesthetically curated social media presence. 6 weeks ago, during our Sunday family roast, Maya stood up, tapped her wine glass with a silver fork, and proudly announced that she was taking us all on an all-expenses-paid trip to the Bahamas. My mother gasped, covering her heart in pure shock. My dad instantly puffed out his chest, bragging about how successful and generous his youngest girl had become. Maya locked eyes with me across the dining table, flashing a sickeningly sweet smile, and silently mouthed the words, "Thank you." I forced a polite chuckle and let it slide, because shrinking myself to make her look bigger was just what I did. I quietly handled everything behind the scenes. I paid for the premium flights, the sprawling oceanfront suites, the rental car, and the private snorkeling excursions. I booked the upgraded seats because of my dad's bad knees, and the adjoining suites because Maya insisted on having her own Zen space. I repeated my lifelong mantra, it doesn't matter who gets the credit, as long as everyone is happy, but the reality was far uglier. A knot of bitter resentment tightened in my chest every single time Maya absorbed glowing praise for a fortune she didn't spend. It burned every time my parents dismissed my heavy lifting, as if it were simply expected of me. It stung whenever Maya casually insulted my boring corporate lifestyle, entirely oblivious to the fact that my boring lifestyle was funding her luxury narrative. Even so, I held on to a fragile hope that this getaway might act as a reset button. I thought that maybe the Caribbean sun and a break from our suffocating routines would soften the jagged edges of our dynamic. I genuinely believed we might finally share a normal, loving experience. Standing in Concourse B with an overpriced iced coffee in one hand and my boarding pass pulled up on my phone, I thought the worst was behind us. I was spectacularly wrong. Within minutes, the fragile illusion of my family shattered completely. When Maya's palm collided with my face, the impact sounded like a cracking whip. For a terrifying, suspended second, the entire world went completely muted. The stinging heat on my skin was blinding, but what truly broke me was the sight of my parents shoving their way through the crowd, their faces twisted with a familiar, furious exasperation directed entirely at me. "What on earth is wrong with you, Clara?" My dad barked, completely ignoring the red handprint blooming on my jaw. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Maya was an absolute professional. She collapsed into my mother's shoulder, her voice quavering with theatrical perfection. "She's been trying to ruin this trip for me all week. I just can't take her constant bullying anymore." The lie was so effortless it was almost impressive, but what chilled me to the bone was how eagerly my parents swallowed it. My mother stroked Maya's hair, shooting me a look of pure disgust. "Why are you always so jealous of your sister? Why can't you just let her have this?" There it was, the ancient, unbreakable script. Standing in the middle of the terminal, surrounded by dozens of whispering strangers recording the meltdown, every humiliating memory I had buried came rushing back to the surface. I remembered her community college graduation. Maya had barely scraped by, yet she demanded a lavish party to celebrate her academic triumph. My parents were broke, so I quietly covered the $2,500 for the catered food, the massive tent, and the custom cake. Maya stood on the patio, giving a tearful speech, thanking our parents for giving her the world. Everyone clapped. My dad hugged her tight. I stood in the background, bagging up the trash, smiling through the sting. I remembered the downtown apartment. 3 years ago, she miraculously secured a gorgeous loft because I quietly co-signed the lease. She filmed a viral apartment tour, bragging to her followers about the hustle required to be a fiercely independent woman. She conveniently omitted that my immaculate credit score was the only thing keeping her from living in our parents' basement. I remembered the disaster of an engagement. She had been engaged for a miserable 5 months to a guy who eventually realized he couldn't afford her delusions. She had called me hyperventilating because she found her dream ring, but he couldn't finance it. I transferred her $6,000. She bought it, posted 100 photos about how blessed she was, and when the wedding was inevitably called off, she pawned the ring and never paid me back a single dime. And then came the cruelest memory of all. The dinner 6 weeks ago, the smirk on her face when she took credit for the Bahamas, soaking in my parents' adoration while I faded into the wallpaper. The heavy, suffocating weight I had felt wasn't just annoyance, it was grief. Grief for the family I was never going to have. Now, playing the villain in front of an audience of travelers, the illusion finally broke. "Apologize to her," my dad ordered, stepping up to me with an authoritative glare. "Right now, do it like you mean it." My jaw was aching, but my throat felt remarkably clear. I didn't back down. "I didn't do a single thing to her," I said, keeping my voice dead level. "Clara." His tone dropped into that deeply disappointed register that had controlled me since childhood. "Look at your sister. You made her cry. Fix this, now." I looked at Maya. Her mascara was running in perfect symmetrical lines, a flawless portrait of victimhood, and right then the decades of conditioning snapped. There was no rage, there was no explosion, there was only a profound, freezing clarity. No amount of money, patience, or self-sacrifice was ever going to be enough. If I apologized today, I would be apologizing for the rest of my life. I stood there, feeling the burning imprint of her hand, and realized that if I followed my dad's command to fix it, I would permanently break myself. The background noise of the airport rushed back in, the rumble of luggage wheels, the automated boarding announcements, the murmurs of onlookers. I took a deep, shuddering breath and exhaled a lifetime of submission. "I need to use the restroom," I said quietly. My dad waved his hand in disgust. "Whatever, make it fast. We board in 20 minutes. Maya sniffled into my mother's cardigan. "Just make sure she stays away from me." I didn't argue. I turned and walked toward the far end of the terminal. I didn't storm off. I walked with the deliberate, heavy steps of someone waking up from a very long coma. My hands were shaking slightly. I pressed my fingers against my cheek, feeling the heat. It wasn't the physical pain that bothered me anymore. It was the absolute absurdity of the situation. I found a quiet alcove near an abandoned currency exchange counter, leaned my back against the cool glass, and closed my eyes. The fog was lifting. Maya's smirk. My mother's scowl. My dad's blind defense. They loved the convenience of me, but they didn't actually love me. I opened my eyes, pulled my phone from my pocket, and opened my email. I stared at the airline confirmation. 4 seats, 4 passengers, 1 singular credit card. Mine. I scrolled down, the luxury suites, the premium car rental, the private boat charter. All secured by my name, my money, my effort. A radical, perfectly legal idea materialized in my mind. It wasn't an act of vengeance. It was simply the introduction of a boundary. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but for the first time in my life, it wasn't out of anxiety. It was adrenaline. I dialed the airline's premium customer service line. A professional, soothing voice answered on the second ring. "Thank you for calling. How can I assist you with your travel plans today?" I looked down the long concourse. I could barely make out my family in the distance. They were sitting together, chatting and laughing, entirely unbothered now that the problem had removed herself. "Hi," I said, my voice steady and completely calm. "I need to make a major adjustment to my reservation." "Certainly. I have your itinerary to Nassau pulled up. 4 passengers. What changes are we making?" I didn't hesitate. "I need to cancel 3 of those tickets, effective immediately." The agent paused, the typing on her end stopping completely. "Just to confirm, you are canceling 3 of the 4 tickets on this itinerary?" "Yes. Leave only the ticket for Clara Vance active." "Understood," she replied professionally. "Please be aware there are cancellation penalties, but the remaining balance will be refunded directly to the original payment method, which appears to be your card. That's perfectly fine. Process it." With a few keystrokes, 29 years of emotional extortion evaporated. When the updated itinerary hit my inbox, showing only my name, I felt a physical weight lift off my spine. But I wasn't finished. I opened the resort's application and dialed their concierge. "Hello, this is Clara Vance. I need to modify my upcoming stay. Please cancel the second suite and remove the additional 3 guests from the reservation. Just 1 guest, 1 room." "Of course, Ms. Vance. We'll process that refund to your card immediately. We look forward to hosting you." Next went the SUV rental, downgraded to a sporty little convertible just for me. Finally, I canceled the snorkeling excursions and the dinner reservations. With every confirmation email that pinged into my inbox, another link in the chain snapped. By the time locked phone screen, my hands had stopped shaking entirely. I wasn't the obedient, terrified daughter anymore. I was an adult who held all the cards. I checked my watch, adjusted my carry-on strap, and began the long walk back to gate 14. When I arrived, my family was exactly as I had left them. Maya was aggressively texting someone, my mom was applying hand lotion, and my dad was deeply engrossed in a magazine. They looked so comfortable, so completely secure in the knowledge that I would return, apologize, and make their lives easy. I stopped a few feet away from them. "I'm going to go line up at the boarding podium." My mom looked up, irritated. "What are you talking about? We're all sitting right here." Maya rolled her eyes without looking up from her screen. "Stop trying to get attention, Clara." I looked directly at my sister, my expression entirely hollow. "You aren't going to the Bahamas, Maya." She let out a short, condescending laugh. "Are you having a breakdown? I literally planned this trip." I held up my phone, the screen brightly displaying the 3 cancellation notices. "You didn't plan a thing. I booked it, I paid for it, and 5 minutes ago I canceled all 3 of your tickets." The atmosphere in the seating area instantly vaporized. The smugness dripped off Maya's face, replaced by utter confusion. My dad slammed his magazine down and stood up. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Maya lunged forward and grabbed my arm, yanking the phone closer to read the screen. Her eyes darted back and forth over the words, "Status. Cancelled. No. No, no, no. You can't do this." I told everyone I was going. Then you'll have to tell them you lied, I said, pulling my arm out of her grip. My mom leaped out of her seat, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. Clara, stop this right now. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing, I replied coldly. If you don't believe me, ask the gate agent. My dad didn't wait. He marched straight to the desk, slapped his ID down, and demanded they check the family reservation. Maya and my mother trailed right behind him, looking like they were suffocating. I stood back and watched. The gate agent typed for a few seconds, frowned, and shook her head. Sir, I'm sorry, but 3 of the passengers on this locator were cancelled just moments ago. The only active ticket is for a Miss Clara Vance. My dad's face drained of color. He slowly turned to look at me, absolute fury burning in his eyes. How dare you do this to us? After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I echoed, stepping closer so I didn't have to raise my voice. You mean letting me bankroll her entire life? You mean standing there and watching her hit me, and then demanding, I apologize? We didn't see what happened, my mom pleaded, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. We just wanted everyone to get along. Please, Clara, we can't afford to buy new tickets at the counter. I know, I said. That's why I paid for them in the first place. Maya pushed past our parents, her face panicked, the theatrical tears replaced by genuine terror. Clara, please. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I hit you. I was just stressed out. You can't leave me here. My followers think I'm doing a brand trip! I looked at her, truly seeing the pathetic, hollow core of her for the first time. You're 27 years old, Maya. It's time you start funding your own lies. Over the intercom, a crisp voice announced, now boarding first class and group 1 for Nassau. I turned toward the boarding lane. My dad stepped directly into my path, his fists clenched at his sides. If you get on that plane, Clara, do not bother coming back to our house. We are done. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I simply stared back at the man who had traded my peace for my sister's comfort my entire life. I'm not the one destroying this family, I said softly. I just finally stopped paying for the privilege of being abused. I stepped smoothly around him. He didn't try to stop me again. I handed my phone to the gate agent, who scanned my boarding pass with a quiet ding. She handed it back, offering me a sympathetic, knowing smile. Have a wonderful flight, ma'am. I definitely will, I replied. Walking down the jet bridge, the heavy, suffocating pressure I had carried in my chest for almost 30 years simply vanished. When I settled into my window seat, the sunlight warming my face, I felt entirely weightless. As the plane pushed back from the gate, I looked out the reinforced glass. Standing inside the terminal windows, I could see them. Maya was screaming at our father. My mother was sobbing into her hands. My dad looked entirely defeated, staring blankly at the aircraft. They looked like parasites who had suddenly realized their host had died. The trip to the Bahamas was nothing short of a revelation. The ocean was incredibly blue, the air was warm, and for 7 straight days I didn't apologize to anyone. I drank expensive wine on my balcony, swam in the clear water, and slept soundly. My phone was flooded with furious texts, guilt-tripping voicemails, and desperate apologies. I didn't block them. I just put the phone on silent and let them scream into the void. 2 weeks after I returned home, a thick envelope arrived in my mail. It was a letter from my parents. Without the financial cushion I provided, they had been forced to face Maya's actual reality. The letter was a long, humiliating admission of their failures, their blatant favoritism, and a desperate plea for me to come back to Sunday dinners. I read it once, folded it neatly, and dropped it into the shredder. I realized that peace doesn't require an audience, and closure doesn't require an apology. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop playing your assigned role, change the locks on your life, and let the people who used you figure out how to survive on their own.